You're walking through open woodland somewhere in what will eventually be called New South Wales, roughly 40,000 years ago, and the branch above you just moved wrong. Not wind, something heavier. You look up and there's a creature the size of a leopard draped along the limb, thick forearms, retractable claws bigger than anything you've ever seen on a cat, and a bite about to come down with more force per pound than any predator alive today. This is not a leopard. This is a marsupial, and it has been sitting up there watching you for longer than you realized. Here's the assumption that needs correcting first. Most people picture prehistoric Australia as basically today's Australia, just with bigger kangaroos hopping around. That picture is almost comically wrong. Up until around 40,000 years ago, this continent had an entire ecosystem of apex predators that had nothing to do with the placental mammal predators everywhere else on Earth. Marsupials evolved in near-total isolation after Australia split from the other continents, and isolation didn't make the predators smaller or gentler, it just made them strange. Start with the one in the tree, because it's the strangest of all of them. Phylocoleo carnifex, commonly called the Marsupial Lion, wasn't related to lions at all. It was a specialized carnivorous relative of wombats and koalas, weighing up to 100 kilograms, with a set of bladed premolar teeth unlike anything else in the mammal world, built purely for slicing rather than crushing. In 2005, biomechanist Stephen Rowe led a study modeling its bite force relative to body size and found that Phylocoleo had the strongest bite of any mammal predator on record for its size, stronger relative to body mass than a lion, a tiger, or even a Tasmanian devil. And it had one more trick most predators its size don't, a semi-opposable thumb with an enormous retractable claw, allowing it to climb trees and, according to fossil evidence from caves like Narakorte in South Australia, drag prey up into them. You weren't just being hunted on the ground, you were being hunted from above. But the tree wasn't the only place death was waiting. On the ground, and often in the water, something even stranger had been patrolling for millions of years. Quinkana, a genus of terrestrial crocodile that, unlike modern crocodiles, had long legs built for running down prey on dry land rather than ambushing from water. Fossil evidence places some species at over 6 meters long, with blade-like teeth suited for slicing through flesh rather than the crushing bite of modern crocodiles. This wasn't an animal you avoided by staying away from rivers. This was an animal that could be waiting in the scrub a kilometer from any water at all. And if you somehow avoided the tree and the ground, there was still the water itself, because Australia's rivers and swamps held something that looked less like a crocodile and more like a myth made real. Wonambi narracotatensis, named directly from the Narracota caves where it was first identified, was a giant constrictor snake reaching lengths estimated at 5 to 6 meters, thick-bodied, ambushing prey near waterholes in a manner closer to a python than anything resembling a modern venomous snake. Paleontologist Michael Lee, who has studied the species extensively, has noted that Wonambi belonged to an entirely extinct family of snakes found only in Australia and New Guinea, one final isolated branch of a snake lineage that had vanished everywhere else on Earth millions of years earlier. Here's where the story gets genuinely disturbing, because the largest predator on this list wasn't a mammal, a reptile, or anything resembling one. It walked on 2 legs. Dromorniphids, a family of flightless birds sometimes called demon ducks despite being distantly related to modern waterfowl, included species like Genyornis newton and the earlier, larger Dromornis stirton, standing over 2 meters tall and weighing several hundred kilograms, with a beak powerful enough to crush bone. For years, these birds were assumed to be gentle herbivores, oversized emus with nothing to fear. Later analysis of their skull structure and beak mechanics led some researchers to argue the largest species were likely capable of predatory, or at least aggressively opportunistic feeding, a bird taller than a grown man with a beak like a hatchet standing in the same landscape you were trying to cross. So, what happened to all of them? By roughly 40,000 years ago, every single species on this list, the marsupial lion, the land crocodile, the giant snake, the demon ducks, is gone. And the timing lines up disturbingly closely with something else: human arrival in Australia, currently dated by archaeological sites like Majabebe in the Northern Territory to at least 65,000 years ago, meaning humans and this entire cast of predators shared the continent for tens of thousands of years before the predators vanished. Here's the part almost nobody talks about, because the debate over what actually killed Australia's megafauna is still one of the most contested arguments in the entire field. Some researchers, pointing to a climate that was becoming steadily drier and more fire-prone across this period, argue habitat collapse did most of the damage before humans ever became a major factor. Others, including archaeologist Judith Field, whose excavations at a site called Cuddy Springs uncovered stone tools directly alongside megafauna remains, argue the extinction timeline lines up too precisely with human arrival to be a coincidence, and that hunting, combined with landscape-altering fire use, pushed already stressed populations over the edge. The honest answer is that nobody has definitively settled it. What's not in dispute is that an entire continent worth of apex predators evolved in isolation for tens of millions of years into some of the strangest killing machines the mammal, reptile, and bird lineages ever separately produced, all disappeared within that same narrow window that a new predator, walking on two legs and carrying fire, arrived on their continent for the first time. Which leaves an uncomfortable footnote sitting underneath the entire story. Aboriginal oral traditions across the continent describe the massive serpents, the rainbow serpent among the most widespread, tied to waterholes and rivers, and enormous bunyips said to lurk in swamps and drag the unwary beneath the surface. Whether or not those specific stories trace back to Wonambi or to some other vanished predator is something researchers still argue about, but the pattern is the same one that shows up on every other continent where megafauna and humans overlapped long enough to matter. People rarely invent a monster from nothing. Usually, they just remember one.